Hi and welcome back. I'm Darren and this is Monkey Tree Woodwork. Today I'm making a crosscut sledge. Yes, I know it's another video of a crosscut sledge. Everyone's done one. I can see YouTube, millions of them out there. But this was more for me as a necessity rather than a tutorial for you guys to learn how to make one. But as I was making it, why not video it? Hopefully somebody will get something from it and make one themselves. Now my table isn't particularly the best of quality and it's not very accurate when it comes to a cross cut. So I needed to make one of these. So I started out cutting the board and cutting out the runners. Now the runners apply 6mm. So I cut out 2 of the runners and then proceeded in bringing them down to fit my runners on my table. Now it's going to be different for everybody, so obviously I haven't put any plans for this. This is only a guide for you if you're interested, and you can hopefully adapt and make your own in your own way. Now my table saw I've had for a number of years now, and I've finally grown intolerant to its performance when it comes to cutting a straight line. So after watching a few videos on YouTube, I decided that I needed to make a crosscut jig and to see whether I can get it as accurate as other people on YouTube, because anything, let's face it, is better than what I was getting as the results from the projects that I'd made. So I've glued the runners onto the board and I've taken them down to a degree and I've run it through the table saw so far to see how they slide, and they're binding on the sides and on the bottom. So I've taken out the plane and hopefully going to take some depth off of those. Now I've seen people use perspex and harder woods, but this is what I had in my workshop to hand, so I'm going with that for now. Maybe later in the future, if all works out well, then I'll look to improve the design of mine and go for something a little bit more substantial with perspex or something else that will suit. Now again, all the wood that I've used is surplus in my store, so I haven't actually gone out and purchased any wood for this, so it's going to save me money whichever way round. If it works in accuracy, then it saves me having to buy another table saw for now, and ultimately that's the idea, trying to save yourself some money, creating something with what you've already got. Now as you can see, the black marks on the runners is actually the paint from my table saw rubbing against them, so I can see where it's fouling and can then take a little bit more off with the plane and sandpaper. Now I've shortened the video of how many passes I'd done with the plane, but there was quite a few, didn't want to bore you showing you every one of them, so you can clearly get an indication that I had to take it down until the paint stopped rubbing and fouling on the runners. Now like for you, you may have to do a number of passes. Now with a bit of sandpaper, I started to have a go on the inside and outside of the runners. And again, for your benefit, I speeded things up. I don't normally work this quick. Being self-taught and just a hobbyist, it's more thought process than technique. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You just have to give it a go, and hopefully you get an end result. So as you can see, it did start to free up, and I think I will have to put some wax or something just to help it along. Now I'm drawing a line across the top of the cross-cut board above the runners, and then what I'm going to do then is put some pilot holes in and some screws just to secure the runners to the board, as they're only glued. Measuring with the drill bit, put a tape on there just so that I know where to stop. Now you can see I'm just taking those screws out. I actually got the wrong size screws, and they were slipping in, so I swapped them over and put something in a little bit better. And tighten them down so they're flush. Now for the back fence, the front fence, the one that's closest to you, again just a couple of bits of pine, and to give it a bit of thickness to grab, I doubled the size, gluing two pieces together. Now if you've got any comments, please leave them below. I'd appreciate if anyone has got any advice or suggestions. And oops, butterfingers. Now I don't tend to be making too many of these. This is probably just a one-off situation. It seems to have served me okay so far. So I left that to dry for a few hours before returning and continuing with the project. So once dry, I wanted to take just an edge off the corner, so when it's sat on the cross jig top, the dust has got somewhere to go so that it doesn't foul any of your project work, and it always sits flush against the face. And then I just gave the top either side a 45-degree cut just for comfort whilst gripping the wood. And fixing the face down, initially putting one screw in and testing for alignment, and you can leave the last screw out on the end and make the adjustment, and then finally put the screw in and tighten up. You may have to do that a couple of times so that you get it square to the blade, and each time that you have to do it, drill a new hole. Don't try and force the hole and the fence to stretch themselves. Hope that makes sense. And the back fence, just to secure the board as you cut through, so that it doesn't play around too much. Now I used an engineering square to align with the blade in the front stroke back fence, the one closest to you, whichever way you want to call it, to get it as close as possible. And then what's advised really is, if you want to get as accurate as you want, as accurate as you can, then the idea would be to do a 5 cut test, which we'll do shortly. So the idea of the 5 cut test is that you take a piece of wood and you make the first cut, and you mark that cut as number 1, or a clear mark, so you know that you've come back round to that. And each cut you put against the front face, against the fence there, and then you make the next cut and you rotate until you come back round to that mark, and you do that cut as the last cut, which makes the 5 cut. And if all things have gone well and you've made the correct adjustment on that front fence with the blade, you should have somewhere near an accurate cut. So this is the final cut, and I shall use my engineering square to check the accuracy and straightness of those cuts. And for an old bit of wood lying around in the shop, I was quite pleased with the results.